So there's lots of information out there when you're doing research. There's good sources and bad sources. So how do you tell the difference? Well, we're going to go over this in a general fashion right now. Basically, you have to evaluate the sources. So if you were writing a paper on medical marijuana, you would want to do some research, but then you'd want to evaluate what you found. You don't just want to use the first um, source you find on medical marijuana, or just find three and then use them. That will fulfill the purpose of why you're doing research. You want to comb through things that you find and figure out what is best to use for your purpose. So you might want to use sources from scientists or patients or doctors or maybe even a lawyer. You would use these people because they have ethos, they have credibility, they're experts when it comes to this issue. According to the Owl at Purdue website, the world is full of information to be found. However, not all of it is valid, useful, or accurate. So evaluating sources of information that you're considering using in your writing is a very important step. Got to evaluate your sources. You evaluate movies and products all the time. You figure out if a movie is good or if you didn't like it, or if a product worked, or if it was safe, or if it didn't work, or if it wasn't safe, or and then you tell other people these evaluations. So we want to do the same thing with the sources we find. We don't want to use bad sources. Here's a bad source: tabloids. Everybody knows that we don't rely on the news in tabloids. It's fun to read, but we don't rely on it. But what you might not think about is that even um, sources like these, you still have to evaluate them. Just because it's in a magazine doesn't mean it's accurate or objective or unbiased. Just because it's an academic journal article doesn't mean that it's current or objective. There's tons of websites out there. You really got to look at the website and figure out what it is, who made it, why they made it, before you use it as a source. Even if it's a scientist or a professor, they still might not have the right information for you or for your purpose. Or it might be biased information or inaccurate or old. So you need to figure out that the information you're using lines up with your argument or your purpose. Or if it doesn't line up with your argument or purpose, is there some way to still use it? Maybe to offer evidence for a opposing view or an objection to your argument, or some other reason. Academic journal articles. These are the staple of colleges and universities. These are what get passed around from professor to professor, and they basically keep everybody up to date with what's happening in fields like philosophy and chemistry and English, music, history. Um, an academic journal article is a periodical in which researchers publish articles on their work. So universities usually publish these journals and they're full of articles. They usually discuss recent research, They're typically peer-reviewed journals. So just like we do peer reviewing in class, professors, when they write academic articles, they get emailed around to other professors who serve on boards which work for the journals, and they make sure that it's good stuff before they let it get published. EBSCO and JSTOR identify whether or not the sources are from peer-reviewed publications, so look for that information when you do searches. And of course, EBSCO and JSTOR are academic databases that are filled with a bunch of these articles that come from these journals. EBSCO and JSTOR are available to the citizens of Fort Collins because the city has paid the company to let anyone who has a library card um, look at these things. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of cities do that. Usually it's up to the university to provide this service. Let's talk about internet sources. We need to focus on quality, make sure it's a good source. So you have .com sites, means .commercial. Here's an example of the Coca-Cola website. As you can see, they're trying to sell you something here. Here's another .com site. Now make sure if if you're writing a paper on health care for the elderly, you might want to make sure you know that this is coming from a business consultant, care consultant business. Is that what you want? Or did you want something more objective? There's another example of a .com site, some kind of energy group. There's going to be information on here about energy. Is that what you want to get your information about energy from a business? Could be, but if you want very basic objective information, you might want to try something different, like a .edu or .gov site. So when using internet sources, the best ones to use are the academic databases that you have access to, .edu sites, which are websites of universities, .gov sites, government, .org sites, organization, usually nonprofits. If you do use .com sites, you're probably going to want to use the news media sites, like these. These are good sites to use because they have current opinion, current information, um, and this is where a lot of information and opinion gets disseminated these days, is through newspapers and magazines, which are now online. So of course you can also use the print versions if you come across those. The main thing we have to know when evaluating any source is who wrote it and why. We want to make sure we know if the person who wrote it has any authority in that field or on that topic, or are they just somebody who knows a little bit about it and are writing about it. If so, if they're just somebody who just knows a little bit about it, you might not want to use that person as a source. And why? Are they trying to sell you something? Are they trying to push some kind of agenda? Are they trying to change your mind? Are they biased or unbiased? You're probably going to want to use unbiased information. So evaluate any potential source on these criteria. Authority, who is responsible for the work and what are their qualifications? Accuracy, is it biased? Is it old or new? And does it matter? So authority. In red I have academic journal article and in blue I have internet source. So When looking at an academic journal article, is the author identified? Is there bibliographic information? What are their credentials? And what type of periodical does it appear? For internet source, is the author identified? Kind of the same questions. Lots of these are similar questions you have to ask when evaluating, but some of them are a little bit different. Accuracy. How did they find the information? Did they cite where they got it? Objectivity, it's a big one. Who's the intended audience? What are the goals and biases of the author? What's the purpose of this? Currency, when was it published? When was it created? Do the links still work? Don't use this guy as a source.